Broadcasting from Salisbury University campus, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7, putting Delmarva first. Stay tuned for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
They may be called mighty moms. They are the mothers who see our wounded military personnel through the hard times. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. We often focus on the number of dead that arrive too often at Dover Air Force Base. But there are the wounded, both physically and mentally, that sometimes get left out of the public consciousness. In Unbreakable Bonds, The Mighty Moms and Wounded Warriors of Walter Reed, by authors Dava Guerin and Kevin Ferris. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Dom. Happy to be here.
So what drew you into writing about this particular issue, and particularly the mothers at Walter Reed?
Well, what happened? Originally, I went to Walter Reed to volunteer for an event on Valentine's Day, and the person who was organizing it got sick and couldn't be there, and so she said, well, just go visit this young man in a room at Walter Reed in the hospital. So I did that. And I met an amazing young man named Mark Fiddler as a corporal at the time, a young Marine who was blown up probably, I would say 2 months prior, and he was missing both of his legs. He had a belt on of grenades, and I think 13 of them also blew up, and it was a horrendous injury. And just meeting him, it was just a very sobering experience, and I just kept coming back and visiting him, and as I did that, I met some other wounded warriors and their families, and got to know especially the moms who were taking care of these very, very severely wounded warriors at Walter Reed, who basically had to give up everything, and these guys are 21, 22 years old. The moms were working, they hear about this horrendous thing, and they just leave their jobs, leave everything, and stay at Walter Reed. Some of those moms were there for almost 4 years.
Give us a description of Walter Reed in terms of its layout and how people interact with it.
It is a sprawling complex. It's the Walter Reed. It's a combination, and it was formed together with the old Walter Reed and then the Bethesda Naval Hospital, and it is a very beautiful, physically beautiful, and very large complex. And it does have some of the, in my opinion, some of the best surgeons and physicians, anywhere, who understand how to treat these horrendous injuries. And a lot of what we know in regular medicine has happened because of military medicine and these treatments on the battlefield that are pretty drastic. So it's an imposing place, but in the hospital itself, it is a very welcoming place. Everyone, from my experience too, was generally very caring. These are our nation's heroes who are there, who have, come back and suffered tremendous injuries, both physical and mental. They also have a big complex too that deals with a traumatic brain injury, and they do a lot of research and treatment because a lot of these guys, no matter what, always will have some kind of a head injury. Even if you're injured and you're missing arms or legs and you have a blast, your brain is going to be affected. So they have to deal with so many physical things, but as well as the emotional, psychological, and other traumatic brain injuries. It's really quite an impressive place.
Now, one of the senses I get is that a lot of these soldiers you talk about, write about, there are 10 of them, were the subject of improvised explosive devices. There's sort of suddenness about this explosion, a suddenness about this loss, and many of them, as you write about them, didn't seem, they understood the danger, but it still was something they didn't expect, which is, I guess that's, what do you make of that and how it impacts them?
A lot of them, really, especially after 9/11, so many, young people wanted to go and to fight for our country, and it really gives you the chills to think just how many, what they feel and the patriotism, willing to risk everything. And in one example, in Mark's example, he took photos of his legs before he left because a lot of them knew, we have a big chance of stepping on an IED. They're all over the place there. And he wanted to remember what his legs look like. And that, if that's not chilling, I don't know what is. And, they go there and they know the dangers there, but they're highly trained as well. They are trained warriors. They expected that's what they're there for. And I would say what is so amazing about all of them, and everyone in all of in the books that I've done with Kevin and myself and my husband Terry, we just did a book about another young Marine. But it's just unbelievable that they know the risks, they know all of that, and still, even going through what they did, coming back, missing arms and legs, tons of injuries, every single one of them, when I asked them, would you do it again, they're absolutely, I would go back tomorrow. If they would take me, if they would have robotic legs and I could do it, I would go back.
So tell me then a little bit about the mothers and the fact that they're very conscious of the fact that there is danger over there when their sons or their daughters are there, and they don't really expect the phone call, but they kind of dread it.
Yeah, that is, I think, the biggest fear of anyone to get that call. Worse than the call is the knock on the door. The knock on the door that would mean that the person has passed away. A lot of times, when they get these calls, and they do, there are trained people who just deliver these messages, and that's what they do. And so they're very, very, very sensitive, very caring. But it is a dreaded phone call. And, when you get that phone call, nothing can prepare you. And I have talked to so many of moms, and just in general, of people who have wives as well, get these phone calls and have to drop everything. It is a panic. It is a panic. You leave everything. You leave your home. You grab everything you can in a suitcase, or you hop on a plane. You don't know what to expect. And what happens is lots of times you get to Walter Reed. Unfortunately, there is a network, which is really awesome, of people who are in this situation on social media and otherwise who come to each other's aid. There was a woman, Pam Britt, who just had a horrendous situation with Tyler Jeffries, her son. She didn't know what to do. She was in North Carolina, got the phone call he was injured, raced to Walter Reed, not knowing what to do. But another amazing mighty mom, Maureen Britt Crabb, heard about that, met her right away. Another woman, Stacy Fiddler, joined in. And so these women knew what it was. They had sons who had these injuries. They raced to their aid, talked to them, got them through everything. And through the whole process of all of these moms together being there, they formed a very strong bond and a coalition to help one another, and also for incoming people who were injured to help their parents and or their spouses, deal with this system, because it is very new. But the VA also and other nonprofit groups have lots of information that people can find online that have brochures and everything you need to know, and there are caseworkers and so many people there to support them. The support network is really remarkable.
Give me a sense of what it's like when these mothers arrive and they first see their sons or daughters.
Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience, just seeing them and being with them, not just interviewing them. I think that was the really interesting thing about the first book we did, Unbreakable Bonds, that the book came out of experience. It didn't come out of me thinking, well, I want to write about this, I'm going to go and interview people, but it came from being there and seeing this experience and talking to these moms and just thinking, this is unbelievable. How did you all do this? How did you manage this? It's very traumatic. And to see the injuries, and I have seen them physically, to see, and these are all the most physically fit men and women in the country. I mean, they're trained for this. They are unbelievable. And then to see them come back as a shell, weak and in comas, and it's you just can't imagine. Sometimes they're unrecognizable. They're so swollen from being either shot, blown up, that you would not even know who they were. And to have a mom, a father, a brother, and a sister see their, once physically fit, amazing young man or woman come back missing arms and legs, beyond recognizable. It is, there are no words. It is just a very traumatic. But what is also remarkable, these men and women and parents and loved ones are also very strong. They do have a lot of support, and their resilience literally helped to heal these young men and women way more than if they did not have that support.
One of the things that I think was one of the quotes I saw out of your book from one of the mothers was that she says, quote, "I am not one for confrontation, but you change when it is your child." You see that change taking place in these women?
Firsthand. There was another amazing mighty mom. They're all unbelievable, by the way, but her name is Lynn Braden Reed, and Lynn was from Tennessee. very kind of an academic, very smart and shy. She was not, she was not somebody who really enjoyed confrontation. But when her son Chris was blown up, and by the way, he did receive a Silver Star for his heroism. He lost both legs. His arm was very injured. He had all these other burns and other injuries. And she was devastated. She came by herself to take care of him. It was very awful for her. And initially she didn't know what to do. She relied on everyone else because that was her personality. Over time, oh my goodness, did she change? She just became a mama grizzly, like many of them who didn't have that personality to start. And there was nothing that she would not do to advocate for her son, including going in front of different groups and whatever he needed or didn't have, or she felt he needed, she would write information and write to this person and that person and advocate for her son, as all these moms did. And that was something that did not come naturally to her, and yet she did it.
As a matter of fact, speaking about as medical advocates, the sense I get from the various stories is that there is a difference from time to time as to how the VA and Walter Reed deals with them. Sometimes there are too many doctors, or there's the mothers, or for that matter, the wounded person does not know what's exactly going on. Describe what's going on, because some of that seems uneven, and sometimes it seems as if the medical care is like really right on the organizational side of it. But at other times, the mothers, they look out and they're not sure that the military, and particularly the VA, is really doing what they need to be done.
You know what is so interesting, and it's very easy to criticize anything, especially in a traumatic situation, but what I have seen in general at Walter Reed, now this is only at Walter Reed, it's not at other VA hospitals, but at Walter Reed, where, everyone, the most severely injured, are taken to right away. I think their systems, from what I have seen, are really tremendous. I think they really generally are there to do the right thing. They have very, very fine doctors. But like anything, occasionally things go wrong. And what was very interesting was, and I don't recall the exact details of the case, but what happened was the communication between different functions. When someone's injured, you may have a pulmonologist, you might have a plastic surgeon, you're going to have a cardiologist, because you have many, these guys and women have so many injuries. And they do usually work as a team. But what one mom found, Julie Keys, that in her son Adam's case, and Adam had a horrible, he was there probably among the longest at Walter Reed for 4 years. And by the way, he's now a comedian, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. He's an amazing guy. He was not expected to live. He coded a number of times. He was taken to shock trauma. And what they discovered in his case, and his mom saw, that there was just not the kind of communication she thought should be. And so she brought it up to them. They realized, that was a very valid point. And they did make a lot of changes based on this experience. A lot of the things that happen are based on, what one person's experience is. And my sense was that they took that to heart. And I'm sure now the way they handle things is a lot different based on that one case. And I think it's a learning experience. But in general, to know that they have the best care in the country as far as, these injuries, rehab, and the surgeries. And I think when they can handle something, I think they're wise enough to realize that they need some outside consultation, and that can sometimes happen, especially like in the one young man's book we did, Rebuilding Sergeant Peck, where he had a double arm transplant and got that transplant in Boston. He was a quadruple amputee. Well, you need a little bit of probably extra from someone like that, extra information than what you would typically see, since they don't do that kind of surgery at Walter Reed. But in general, I think the care, was excellent. I think these guys and women, had they not been there and had that immediate care, on the battlefield right away, and not been taken to Walter Reed, they would not be with us today, I'm sure.
One of the kinds of injuries that we don't really see is, of course, the traumatic brain injury, because it's so invisible. How does that change in terms of the people involved, and how difficult is it to deal with trying to get that back on track?
Oh, the physical injuries hopefully will heal, and even for the men and women who've lost limbs, the prosthetics are fabulous now. You learn to deal with things, and there's a lot of support. You cannot fix somebody's brain 100%, when that happens. When when you have a traumatic brain injury and certain parts of the brain are gone, I mean, they're dead. They're not, they're not coming back. You can relearn certain things. You can definitely learn to function better, but that is the to me, among the most sad things, to see a grown man, top of their game. And I'll give you an example. Robert Scott enlisted in the Army after 9/11. A lot of his friends were killed. He worked on Wall Street. And he decided to go into the Army to, avenge the situation, with all of the people he lost. His mom, Valence Scott, and his whole family, he was injured, had a horrendous traumatic brain injury, came back. Now, this was a person, by the way, who had a master's degree, 2 master's degrees, was an intelligence officer, very intelligent guy. Came back and couldn't even remember how to take a shower, could not remember to eat. It was a very, very long road, and his mom literally is still living with him years later. He's doing much better. He's in a vocational rehab program through the Army, and there's so much support for these men and women, which is great. But he can never be who he was. You can be as good as you can be, but it's invisible, so people don't see that. And can you imagine going through life when you were, again, at the top of your game, you come back and you don't even know, you get frustrated if you can't find a direction in your car, and you just stop in the middle of the highway and start crying.
What's the situation with wives? I think at one point, it's Adam Keyes, Julie Keyes, the wife, Rosie, basically just sent him the divorce papers and was never seen again.
Yeah, for the small percentage of wives who can't handle it or who are just probably not great people before it happened, that is really sad because, no one deserves that. In John Peck's case, his wife, after he lost all of his limbs, just, took his money and, said some really terrible things to him. It really put him in a really deep depression. And that's very terrible. But these women would be the same in life no matter what happened. If they were married to a banker and the banker got fired and lost everything, they would probably do the same thing. But what I also saw are amazing wives, Claudia Avila, Jackie Goodrich, who have done things for their husbands, stood by them when there was probably no hope. I also saw that firsthand, and they fought for their husbands and are with them today, are so totally devoted. And I think the majority of the wives of the very severely wounded are also amazing people. I was thinking it'd be great to do a book about them. But actually, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation has a really good program, the Dole Fellows, and they bring together a lot of wives, too. And you can see so many of those stories. And that's a really great testament to, the faith and the determination of a lot of women who are, inherit these horrible situations.
Now, you have one story. It's about one of the vets who was actually shot by his own person. Most of the military out there are obviously worried about the jihadists, but this came out of nowhere.
Yeah, Jeffrey Shank, now he's another unbelievable story. He was shot in the head. Now, I remember meeting him and his mom, Tammy, who were also great people, at Walter Reed in the hospital, and her telling me, and this is not that long after he was shot, it was a horrible situation, too, and he was so badly injured, and she had no idea what was going to happen, who he would become, his personality. He would just have these outbursts and anger and all kinds of odd behaviors. He wasn't that way before. He was a rambunctious young man, but certainly this behavior was just obviously, from having this brain injury, horrible brain injury. Because of her determination and his determination, he is now a chef. He has a family. He is doing so well. And in his case, I think what happens is, as the brain is healing, while you don't regain all of the things you had before, you can find other ways, and you learn how to deal with the fact that you may have these outbursts. So if you do, you'll know to tell somebody, or you will, you have all these different things that you will learn through therapy. You have a service animal, a service dog. You have a lot of support, and so it's just remarkable how they can, how you can mitigate a lot. It will never be the same, but you accept your new normal, and you just. And if you ask a lot of people, like Adam Keyes will say, it made me a different person. It made me more sensitive, more caring, more understanding of others who do have, these types of injuries. And then there's a lot of humor in it as well. You have to laugh. You have to laugh, or it will be, you will be a statistic. And I think another thing is seeing how some of these young men and women, traded the misery with laughter.
Finally, the last story, I think it is, the service person in particular did not make it. He died. Tell me a little bit about that. That was when you think about Gold Star mothers, Gold Star parents, of the ones who make the ultimate sacrifice. In Derek's case, it was really sad. He was doing so well. He was it got engaged, and he basically, it was just a very unexpected turn of events. And you can't, there's just no way to say how awful that is, especially when you see, your son and daughter making progress, and then something horrendous happens. And, it's like anyone who loses a loved one. If somebody has a horrible disease, or they have a brain tumor, or they have cancer, or whatever, or something that is unexpected, there's no way around it. Anytime you lose someone, it's very difficult. And I think the strength of a lot of the Gold Star moms is to keep the spirit of their loved one alive. And a lot of, moms have been very involved in letting the world know about what their son and daughter has done. By the way, I want to turn to something else. You have written a book about vets and pets, in which pets are utilized by veterans, particularly whether they've lost legs or whether there's PTSD, in order to get around. Tell me a little bit about how you got interested in this. I know here locally we actually had a couple of people who were developing a dog program of their own.
Oh, well, what's funny? All of the wounded warriors who, a lot of them become your close friends forever. They're, some, not everyone, of course, but some you just naturally, take to and want to be around, and they're almost like your second family. So I've been around a lot of dogs, and we love dogs anyway. So we have dogs forever, and so you get to know the dogs. The dogs are so integrally part of their lives. Like Tyler Jeffries had a beautiful red European Doberman Apollo, who was his service dog. And so you naturally just have this feeling for dogs. And so our publisher said to us, listen, if you guys can do a book, because we were saying, wouldn't it be good to do a book about maybe one wounded warrior and one outstanding dog? And our editor came back and said, well, listen, how about it? Can you research it and see what other animals you can find other than dogs? If you guys can do that, we have a deal. We're like, sure, no problem. So Kevin and I researched all kinds of things and wanted to find animals, in addition to dogs, that would really have helped Vietnam veterans and veterans from the War on Terror heal, and we found, oh gosh, do we find crazy animals, from pot-bellied pigs, cats, birds of prey, horses. And we hoped we would find the stories that were really, truly amazing, and that people would love to read about because they were so different.
In terms of these, particularly the dogs, you mentioned, for instance, Apollo, the dog of the European Doberman. And I saw a quote where Apollo is in full mode, his eyes lock on him when in command. When he has a vest, it's business, and when he's not, he's a regular dog. They seem to sense their role.
Yeah, they are trained. The person who trained Apollo is Brandon McMillan, who is the host of CBS's Lucky Dog. And he decided, and I think Apollo was the first dog he trained for a wounded warrior for free. And they are trained rigorously for months and months and months for the needs of that particular wounded warrior. In Apollo's case, because Tyler was missing his legs, he needed, and Tyler's a big, strong guy, needed a large dog to be able to brace, to retrieve things for him. So Apollo was trained for that purpose. And when that vest is on, and this is any service dog, by the way, when they're trained, when that vest is on, their mission is strictly, you can give them food, you can do anything you want, they will not budge. They know their job, they're working, and their job is to do what they were trained for their owner. And however, when they take the vest off, watch out, they are just like anyone's dog. They're crazy, they want food, they're jumping all over, they're like, hey, I'm a dog again, yay.
It seems that they play sort of two roles. One is to combat the isolation, relieve stress. On the other hand, they operate as a bridge between the vet and the outside world to navigate. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, depending again on what that person needs. Leslie Nicole Smith, one of the people in our books, lovely woman. She was an Army captain. So she lost a leg and is mostly blind, and so her dog, Isaac, has many, many roles for her. He acts as a guide dog to make sure that she's safe, wherever they go, to retrieve items for her. There was a story about Isaac that it just blew me away writing it, that she was outside and a pit bull got out of someone's yard, started charging towards her and towards Isaac. And the dog began, and actually she put out her prosthetic leg so that the dog would bite the leg because it wouldn't hurt her. Isaac got in the middle to protect her. When Isaac saw that this was not stopping and this dog would not let go, the dog began to bite Isaac. Isaac took off in the opposite direction, ran into a field because he wanted to have the dog get away from Leslie. Now, when you think about that, that is unbelievable. He risked his own life, was injured, to get rid of this pit bull so that Leslie would not be injured. I mean, that is unbelievable. So, they really are so amazing as animals, and they can do so much. And they really, really help, especially with people who need the task done for them, but also the emotional support. And while they are not, they're service dogs, not therapy dogs, pure service dogs, but they also act in that role, and they give that person comfort and love and all of the things that a dog, can do for a human being.
I was struck, by the way, I have a quote out of your book. It says, the media only lets you know about those who have died. So many are injured, but you never hear about them.
Yeah. Yeah, that, believe it or not, is my main mission, because I have seen firsthand that, when someone is injured in the hospital, when you're at Walter Reed and you're rehabilitating, you have so much support. You have everything there for you. You have your buddies. You have your therapists, your doctors. When you go home and you're all over, scattered around the country, you find yourself isolated from your buddies, from people who can support you other than maybe your family. And so I think it's really important that, Americans always remember, given that only 1% of us has a member of their family in the military, it's not top of mind. And when you are a young person and you are sent to defend your country, you come back a broken person. Who cares about you? Who's going to remember you? And I have to say, my mission is, and I've seen a lot of times from people like Gary Sinise, who I was very inspired by with what he does, and to really, and he always says, you can always do a little more. And I think every American, I think we owe it to them to do more, because these wounds don't heal. They'll always have trauma. They will always wake up with probably bad dreams. You manage it, but it's a constant struggle. And I think that if people could reach out in their communities, just to one person, one life, do something. And I think it's great if you donate money, and that's wonderful. But it's really even better if you can get involved with somebody and just be there, and strike up a friendship. Just do something, because it helps for that isolation. And I have to say, the one thing I'm very proud of so many of the people in our book, every one of them. Tyler Jeffries is a good example. He just started a nonprofit called Hooking Veterans, and because he realized that this isolation, he felt it, he experienced it. He didn't want anyone else to feel it, so he began a nonprofit to help other guys in his position connect with each other through fishing. And so that is really a remarkable thing to do.
Okay. When we've been speaking, by the way, with Dava Guerin, she is co-author of the book Mighty Moms and Wounded Warriors of Walter Reed, amongst others, focusing certainly on those who survive the war and must come back and adjust to civilian life. Appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this morning.
Oh, my pleasure.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for watching Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Production and audio engineering by Chris Rank. Hosted by Don Rush. For podcasts, visit delmarvapublicradio.net or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. You can also watch Delmarva Today on PAC 14 by tuning into Comcast Channel 14 or youtube.com/Delmarva /PAC14.